you make me talk.
I know. Well, you know what I was thinking? We always say with Johnny Cash Friday, we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news of the day. And you're the news. And oftentimes oftentimes when I get to the news, they're like, oh, we want to listen to more Johnny Cash. And so, yeah, it's kind of a disadvantage sometimes,
Yeah.
to be on during that day. Hey, let me ask you this, Rick. Your band, Triple Nickel, do you guys ever do any Johnny Cash covers?
Yeah, couple. Yeah, of course, everybody does. Folsom Prison Blues, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You kind of got to do that. But yeah, we do a couple. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so what's going on, Rick? Are you in DC now?
I am. Yeah, we are in session today, and it's a probe season, so it's a busy time of the year when we're trying to get, basically get all the bills paid, for the next fiscal year. And believe it or not, I mean, we're making good progress on our approach bills. We're on schedule, on track, and everything. And we want to understand the Senate's actually doing something for a change. And so, that's good news. We're on track to maybe get these things done.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, and that's how long has it been since we've actually kind of had regular order when it comes to the budgeting process?
1994, I think.
Oh gosh.
I mean, you got to laugh to keep from crying. It's really kind of sad. But yeah, as I understand it, 1994 was the last time that we got all 12 appropriations bills through both chambers, conferenced, and signed. So what we end up with is sometimes a portion. We get a few of them done, then we do an omnibus appropriations bill as a catch-all to clean up, or something like that. And what we've seen so much of in the last few years is these continuing resolutions. And so, I'm hoping that'll change this time around.
Yeah. I've been following a little bit of, what's going on with the trade. And I know we had you on maybe a couple months ago talking about, these different tariffs and things like that. Are there any new developments, any new concerns that you have with what's going on?
Yeah, I think there's really kind of something that escaped my attention, but really I think it's worth sharing, and that is that if you view the tariffs in context of tax reform, what that means. And so what we're seeing is that because of our tax reform, because now we are a more competitive market in the global space, because we have fewer U.S. businesses wanting to locate offshore, and because we have more U.S. businesses that are located offshore, either coming back or repatriating their dollars to invest in the United States, it's empowering our economy, and the effect that it's having on the Chinese economy is really it's a pretty chilling effect. And so if you combine that with tariffs, this is why China is in a panic about tariffs. And so when we say tariffs, from the trade standpoint here in the United States, people tend to freak out and they tend to panic. And thinking back to my ag econ class at Arkansas State University, tariffs were inherently bad. We can't do tariffs because that's bad for U.S. agriculture. But then at the same time, we talk about terms like inelastic or elastic demand. Well, the demand in China is decidedly inelastic. They have to have soybeans, and there's only a certain number of them out there, and we're a top 3 exporter. And so, in the short term, what you've seen is a drop in the price. But what's taking place now is these countries are scooping up U.S. soybeans, and we haven't even gotten to harvest yet. So I think what you're seeing is that there's a really incredible amount of pressure on the Chinese economy. I think they have been, sort of what I call economic saber rattling now, and have done for quite some time. They're a belligerent actor in economically. They're a belligerent actor militarily, politically, and otherwise. And so, it's really about time that we decided, hey, we're going to get in the war too. Quite frankly, China has been at war with us for at least 20 years. Ever since they've been in the WTO, you'd think that would have somewhat of a stabilizing effect in terms of our relationship with China. But in fact, it hasn't, because the WTO allows them to get away.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. It is Monday, and right now, or in the coming moments, this hour, let's just say, President Donald Trump is expected to meet during this hour with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and of course, that will be the topic of many a morning news program today, and it's going to drive the left crazy. The mainstream media I was listening to on the way in to do the broadcast this morning, some of their questions, they were getting reports from reporters who were live on the ground in Helsinki, Finland, and the questions were just absolutely so biased to the point where if you didn't know anything, you would assume that Donald Trump was a Russian agent based on the questions that are being asked of reporters on the ground. It's just insane. Welcome to the program. You've found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. We got to have your help to do that. One of the ways you can do it is to keep listening. You can also sound off on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Conduit News, where we are broadcasting, live streaming there. You can also send us a text message or give us a phone call, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We'll try to bring you, if there's any developments in this hour, when it comes to the Trump-Putin summit, we'll try to give you as up-to-date updates as we can. I've got several live feeds pulled up right now. Joe does too on his side of the glass. But President Trump, the news this morning, President Trump and President Vladimir Putin of Russia are about to meet at the presidential palace in Helsinki, Finland. We also have report in that Vladimir Putin was late, so President Trump has really just been huddling with his advisors a little longer than expected. You get the feeling, don't you, that the deep state, which, you know, some people in the mainstream media will tell you, well, the deep state is a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. You get the feeling that the deep state does not want this meeting to take place. Did anyone get that feeling on Friday? After we got off the air, after Conduit News Radio concluded on Friday, a couple hours after that, you had the news of Rod Rosenstein. He indicted 12 Russians for hacking into the DNC and all this other stuff. And I was thinking to myself, really, right as how in the world, and if everything was reversed politically, partisanly, then all of the Sunday talk shows would have been about the politicization of the FBI and the Justice Department. I mean, does anyone really think this wasn't planned, that President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are scheduled to meet, and they want to paint Donald Trump as a Russian agent? And so the Friday before the Monday meeting in Helsinki, they bring up the Russia story again. This was after President Trump had a dynamite week abroad, standing up for American values, standing up for American interests when it comes to NATO and renegotiating the amount of money these countries pay. When it comes, also Friday, by the way, he had an amazing press conference with Theresa May, speaking a lot of truth to the reporters over there, speaking a lot of truth. You had Nigel Farage. Remember Nigel Farage, the guy, the leader of the UKIP party, or the former leader of the UKIP party over there that actually stands for like individual rights over in the UK. He was saying it was very refreshing to have an American president come and speak truths to the people of Britain. I was actually driving the other day. I was driving home from church the other day, yesterday, and I was listening to a little news, which I tend to do on the way home, and I was thinking to myself, wow, I'm so grateful that President Trump is having so much success abroad, that he is speaking truth abroad. Now, you may disagree with how he speaks it, but it is truth, and it is very, very interesting to watch, to see how much of an anti-status quo president and world leader he is. And I think we would all agree that the status quo is not working out good for a lot of us here in America. And then I had this other thought. I tweeted this last night. I'm also so thankful for the Electoral College. Can you imagine if this were Hillary Clinton going on this tour? It would be business as usual. It would be, when Hillary Clinton goes over to Russia to try to do a reset. They want to push a reset button, and then they spell the translation is all wrong, and it doesn't say reset at all. And then, not to mention, it was an e-stop button for like, industrial automation. It was like all stop. It's just this whole thing is. Can you imagine if a Republican had done something so stupid? Anyway, sorry to just kind of unload here this morning. Donald Trump, if you believe the mainstream media, they're going to tell you that he is a Russian agent and that he conspired with Vladimir Putin. For some reason, they just don't want this meeting to take place. They've done everything they could to make sure this meeting doesn't take place, and yet it's supposed to happen at some point this hour. Now, I want you to also think about this. Last week, and this, to me, shows that Donald Trump is not a Russian agent. Donald Trump is also not a slave to the EU or to NATO. Donald Trump is a very independent thinker, and he showed himself as an independent thinker, a guy who's willing to think outside the box last week, because the very guy that the mainstream media is now going to attempt to make you think he is a Russian agent, he's in on it with Putin. He criticized Russia last week. Now, he criticized Russia last week by way of exposing German hypocrisy, Deutschland hypocrisy. Yeah, he did that by saying, you've cut this, you're making Russia rich, you've cut this gas deal with Russia, and then you want us to protect you from Russia, but you're making Russia, it's the equivalent, it's like the equivalent of funding terrorism if we're really going to say that, Russia is black and white bad, Germany's black and white good, NATO's black and white good, Russia's bad. You get the point. And so a guy who essentially is criticizing Russia is pointing out that they are bad actors and that Germany does need protection, and is exposing German hypocrisy. No. Ignore all of that. Ignore all of that. Ignore the fact that he is thinking outside the box, and he's a Russian agent and he can't be allowed to meet with Vladimir Putin. We had a guy at CNN basically saying he's a Russian agent. They want other people in the room to make sure, you're really going to make sure they don't meddle in our elections. I think Senator Rand Paul over the weekend, over the Sunday talk show, Senator Rand Paul said it best. I don't know if anybody caught this. He said, Russia is going to continue to meddle in our elections, and we're going to continue to meddle in theirs. In this word, meddle, it's kind of a, I don't know, isn't it an interesting narrative? Meddle. It's not an intimidating word, is it? Are you meddling kids? I mean, it's what they used to say on Scooby-Doo, right? If it wasn't for you meddling kids. It's just not that scary of a word, if I'm quite honest. But yet, all countries, if they're have any sort of developed nature to them, advanced nature to them, they're going to have intelligence arms, and those arms are going to be interested in who comes to power and what could potentially shift global power and become their rivals or supplant them in some way. This is how the world works. And so, yeah, the idea that the United States meddles in other countries' elections is a reality, and the same thing goes when it comes to Russia. I guess my point is, it's very much like the border situation, isn't it? Kids have been being separated from their parents for decades. When you do something illegal, specifically cross the border illegal, you get separated from your parents, right? It's been happening since the Clinton administration, and only now does the mainstream media say, this is a huge issue. You need to be worked up about it. Our entire moral compass. See, now they care about the moral compass, but they don't care about the 54 million children that have been killed since Roe versus Wade in 1974. Likewise, countries always meddle in each other, but it's only now that Donald Trump happened to win that we want to say, well, the election is somehow not legitimate because Russia did what Russia probably always does. Now, I know you're going to say the DNC server hack and everything else, but we probably still don't know the entire story. The bottom line is, this meeting takes place in Helsinki. It's taking place, or supposed to take place, within the hour, right now. And it's obvious on Friday that the deep state is still alive and well, and they wanted to make sure that if Donald Trump was going to have this meeting, they were going to make it as difficult as possible, and they were going to give the mainstream media as much fodder and as much content as they needed for the Sunday talk shows. That is what is apparent to me. It's also apparent that the so-called deep state and the corporate-controlled media are working together. The number is 870-275-9799. There are, according to Fox News, they're saying, there's 5 key topics that the president's going to discuss today during this meeting. Russian meddling is supposed to be one. Crimea and the annexation of Crimea, by the way, happening under Obama. Then, of course, Russian sanctions, and then Syria. Syria, to me, an arms control. But Syria is the one that I'm most interested in. At this point, if you listen to the reports, they'll tell you that ISIS has been devastated because we actually started killing terrorists, which is refreshing. And here's the other thing that Trump did. Go to this audio clip, Joe. This is President Donald Trump. He was asked by a CBS reporter whether or not, or he was asked, who's the biggest foe? Go to this article. It's a Breitbart article. Who is the biggest foe that America faces? And so Donald Trump decided to list who the foes were, and he's been getting a lot of pushback because he didn't list Russia first. And, of course, they were trying to bait him into making sure, they're trying to torpedo diplomacy here. They're trying to get Trump to say it's like all of a sudden the mainstream media, who's always anti-war, anti-conflict, right? Now they're trying to say no. We need to paint. We've got to have this giant, this giant enemy in the minds of America. Listen to this.
Who's your biggest competitor, your biggest foe globally right now?
Well, I think we have a lot of foes. I think the European Union is a foe, what they do to us in trade. Now, you wouldn't think of the European Union, but they're a foe. Russia's a foe in certain respects. China's a foe economically, certainly. They're a foe. But that doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean anything. It means that they're competitors. They want to do well, and we want to do well. And we're starting to do well. You see what's going on. We have the best employment numbers probably that we've ever had. Black unemployment is the lowest level in history. Hispanic unemployment, the lowest level in history, Jeff. Women unemployment, lowest in 66 years. Our numbers are great. Our GDP numbers are far greater than what they thought.
A lot of people might be surprised to hear you list the EU as a foe before China and Russia.
No, I look at them all. Look, EU is very difficult. I want to tell you, maybe the thing that's most difficult, don't forget, both my parents were born in EU sectors.
All right, so
okay?
stop right there. I do believe, according to CBS News, they are now covering live this summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. It's taking place right now in Helsinki. The two have a face-to-face sitting down, and the media is there present. We're going to take a break. and we're going to be right back. Maybe we'll cue some of this up for you. Let me see what we can do. Okay, folks, this is Conduit News Radio. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, so we got some photos. This meeting, apparently, at least the public one, didn't last very long. Welcome back, folks. We're talking about this Putin-Trump summit that just concluded, from what I can tell. About 8 minutes ago, Putin and Trump closed with a handshake, lasted about 3 seconds. Both men looked tense, and they didn't smile much, according to Jamie Dupree in Helsinki, Finland. They took no questions from reporters. It was a 90-minute one-on-one meeting between Trump and President Putin. So that is the news. There. You see it right there. Okay, good. For those of you watching over at conduitnews.com or facebook.com/conduitnews, there it is. There's the handshake. So, folks, we got a great week for you lined up here on Conduit News Radio. As far as our guest lineup, let's just go over that for a second. So far, coming up at the bottom of this hour, at 7:33, we're going to be talking with Libertarian candidate for the Arkansas Senate race in District 8, Whitfield Hyman. I'm excited about that, not to mention I've got a video I'm going to show you of, it's really good video, of Mr. Whit Hyman firing a dangerous assault weapon. No, it's not really an assault weapon. And then, of course, that video was taken by Mr. Matt Giberson of an outfit called Free TV, where he's doing all these interviews of different candidates across the state. And we're going to be interviewing Matt Giberson about his project, Free TV, Tuesday, so tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, we'll be talking with Mr. Jacob Bundrick from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics about the benefits or the lack thereof of essentially, historically, the Arkansas governor's Quick Action Closing Fund. This is a taxpayer fund, obviously, to try to entice businesses to come here to close the deal and that sort of thing. And then we also have, on Thursday, do you guys know who Judge Jeanine Pirro is? Yes, I know. You're right. The Judge Jeanine on Fox News and her show, Judge Jeanine. We're going to be interviewing her on Thursday morning around 7:30 on her new book that's due out, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. You see that there, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, the case against the anti-Trump conspiracy. Right now you can pre-order. What is it? Does it come out tomorrow? Don't most things come out on Tuesdays? I mean, we're interviewing her on Thursday. Yeah, so it gets released tomorrow. We'll be interviewing her on Thursday on that. Go back to that Breitbart article, though, because I thought that was interesting. She had a great take, Judge Jeanine did, on Peter Strzok, the personification of the deep state itself where fascism rules, talking about Peter Strzok. You know what I'm amazed at, Joe? I don't know if you saw the slow motion, even if whether you saw the slow motion snicker and he like turned into like this little rat face. Like, did you guys see that of Peter Strzok? Okay, well, he was being questioned, and it was not going well for him. But I'm amazed at how many people on Twitter compared his. How do you say this without? I'm just they compared his little moment where he, as like something came out of him, as something just revealed itself in Peter Strzok during that moment, and a lot of people came to this conclusion, and I'm talking about just a darkness, and I know that sounds crazy, but you would be amazed at how many people came to that conclusion by themselves because I had some friends that I was talking to, and we were talking about a mutual friend, and then that's what they had said, but they're not the type that they're older, and they're not the type that would have, been on Twitter, listening to the reading the hashtags and everything else. You know what I mean? That maybe have already editorialized what was going on. But yeah, Peter Strzok, man. I mean, that whole hearing, that whole testimony thing was just. It was a shame. It really actually, I think, hurt the country in terms of the confidence that you have when somebody has essentially, they have so much bias and they have prejudged the case, whether they've prejudged Hillary Clinton's innocence before interviewing anybody or prejudged Donald Trump's guilt just because he won the presidency, and you're trying to get him out of there. And you've got those text messages, and you can't explain those text messages away, and yet he attempted to, and it was really sad. But anyway, the big news is we'll be talking with Judge Jeanine Pirro on Thursday at 7:33, her new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for that. Folks, we're going to be right back here in just a moment, and I want to talk a little bit about some new developments. Could there be more corruption in Arkansas? Now we're talking about possible kickbacks when it comes to the Arkansas Teachers Retirement Fund. The Joint Performance Review Committee is scheduled to meet Tuesday at the Marble Palace in Little Rock to discuss this, but there's already been some preliminary reports. We'll have those for you in just a moment.
A lot of shenanigans, like, for example, manipulating their currency. They refuse to, they float their currency for their own benefit so that they can improve their buying power and decrease our buying power. So it's not a two-way street. It's not fair. It's not all just about trade. It's about monetary policy. It's about tax policy. And all of these things combined seem to be coming to a head right now. And at the end of the day, what we need to understand is China has to have us in a variety of ways, and it's certainly true with soybeans. They have to have U.S. soybeans. They just can't get along without them. So whether or not we sell directly to China or is really not the question. U.S. soybeans will go to China. They're already doing that now. They're going through, purchases from Brazil and Argentina and other nations that are buying at a discount, because right now we're trading at a discount of anywhere from $1.50 to $1.95 against Brazilian soybeans. But they're buying them, and it's going into China. And the other thing is the European Union is buying U.S. soybeans, and that's always been a tough sell. The EU is difficult to deal with on a good day. And so for them to come in and buy, they're the number 2 importer of soybeans in the world by a distant margin. China imports 95 million, or expected to import 95 million tons this year. That's up 26% from 4 years ago. The EU is at 14.5 million tons, so it's a very distant second, but still a significant destination for U.S. soybeans, and the fact that they're buying U.S. soybeans now is also good.
I mean, this is really great information. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford, and he certainly is very knowledgeable about how this, I say trade war, only because I'm, corrupted by these headlines as well. We've got the mainstream media. They use these words like trade war. I think they do it to try to, really kind of, diminish the positive aspects of this and how we do actually have to start reasserting ourselves so that America can get a better deal. That seems to be what the president is doing here. He's trying to alter what has been an imbalance that it seems to have grown over the decades. Recently, we played this at the first of the hour. We talked about the president and what he said to the Sun paper about, the Brexit deal. And, you mentioned it's hard to negotiate with the EU. The president said yesterday to British media that if they don't actually have a clean Brexit and actually allow this to happen, it's going to jeopardize the potential direct trade deal with the UK and the United States, because if Theresa May just
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. I'm going to get into some Arkansas news here. This I thought was interesting. We have the state teacher retirement fund in the news, okay? Now, this was so we have a July 15th article, so this came out on Sunday, with Michael Wickline reporting this headline: Arkansas Teacher Retirement System Chief's role in lawsuit flagged, special master report questions, settlements, attorney's fees. Okay? Now, essentially, what does that all mean? Well, we have, yet again, here in Arkansas, in our government, we have allegations of kickbacks. That's essentially what it is, because a few days before this, Max Brantley over the Arkansas Times on July 12th, his headline: Teacher Retirement Case Reveals Memo About Favors Done for Arkansas Legal Work. Now, Michael Wickline, his piece, it's very detailed, and I'm going to get it here in a minute. But I mean, essentially, what we're talking about is a $4.1 million fee paid to a Houston lawyer named Damon Chargot. Is that how you would say this guy's name? Chargois. I'm just going to go with Chargot. Damon Chargot, described as an intermediary between the Arkansas Teacher Retirement System and Labaton Shurcaro, the firm that handled the lawsuit. Okay? As reported previously, Max Brantley, the Arkansas teacher retirement system was a lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit that won a $300 million verdict. Since then, must have been a slam dunk case. Since then, questions have arisen about $75 million in legal fees, some in the form of an undisclosed finder's fee to another lawyer. That's what that $4.1 million is. A finder's fee to another lawyer. Now, the question on everybody's mind is, the $4.1 million finder's fee that goes to this attorney that found the law firm this amazing Arkansas teacher retirement class action lawsuit where they were the lead plaintiff, where did that $4.1 million go after the fact is what people are wanting to know. Okay? Now, Forbes reported this. Chargot's involvement was concealed from other lawyers within Labaton, as well as most of the co-counsel on the case. Now, Chargot's the one that got the $4.1 million. That's according to what the judge said. Until there were stray email communications that turned up last August, the special master started. Among other materials Labaton later turned over was a 2014 email in which Chargot complained about being undercompensated in some of the other cases where Labaton represented the Arkansas teacher retirement system. Quote, now this is if there is a smoking gun in this case, this is the closest you're going to get to it. This is what makes everybody wonder, Quote, we got you, Arkansas teacher retirement system, as a client after considerable favors, money spent, and time dedicated in Arkansas, Chargot said in that email. That email apparently caught the eye of Judge Wolf, who saw it as a possible indication of political payoffs in Arkansas, similar to allegations federal prosecutors were investigating in, I thought when I was reading this in Forbes, they were going to say Arkansas. But no, they said Massachusetts. So we have federal investigations happening in Massachusetts concerning political payoffs. And now it may have, I want to stress that, it may now reach into Arkansas. And would any of you be surprised at this point in the game with the corruption in the headlines? I say that all the time, the corruption in the headlines daily. Hello? Think, McFly. Forbes goes on. In a heated May 30th sidebar conference that recently became public, Judge Wolf asked Labaton's lawyer, Joan Lukey, directly, quote, whether all those millions of dollars stopped with Mr. Chargot. Meaning, he got $4.1 million in some sort of finder's fee. Are we talking about another essentially, are we talking about another money laundering mechanism? A pass-through, if you will. Quote, I just have to tell you your last comment, I am really in shock, said Lukey. So the lawyer's like, you think we did what? Labaton, this is all again, by the way, we're back on the Max Brantley piece over at the Arkansas Times. He's saying Labaton defends his action. Of course, this law firm is defending their actions. They don't want to say, they're not going to say they're guilty. And there is a statement from the law firm Labaton here. Regardless of the way in which Mr. Chargot, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but whatever. Regardless of the way in which Mr. Chargot described introductions as favors, there was never a whiff of politics or political influence in the way in which our firm became counsel to Arkansas teacher retirement system. Mr. Chargot did indeed make the original introduction of our firm to Arkansas teacher retirement system as a potential client in 2007. A year later, we responded to a request for qualifications issued by Arkansas teacher retirement system to serve as monitoring counsel to help review and track the fund's large investment portfolio for losses that might have a basis for litigation claims based on our long-standing record as one of the country's leading investor class action law firms and our success in recovering billions of dollars for institutional investors. Arkansas Teacher Retirement System engaged us as one of the 5 law firms nationally to serve as its monitoring counsel, which ultimately led to our role representing the fund in several class actions, including State Street. That's the case in question here. Our selection to represent Arkansas Teacher Retirement System was predicated entirely on merit and qualifications and not as a result of favors to anyone elected or otherwise. Okay. So, that's interesting. Max Brantley cites the National Law Journal, also delved into the Arkansas political ramifications of the case. Quote, Labaton and its lawyers have frequently made campaign contributions to both federal and state politicians, but their donations to Arkansas state election campaigns have been minimal, according to a search of records since 2002. FollowTheMoney.org. The article goes on, though. This is interesting. Hopkins became the executive director of the Arkansas Pension Fund in 2009. At the May 30th hearing, Hopkins told Wolf, the judge, that even though Labaton had started working with them a year earlier, he hadn't considered moving forward on potential lawsuits. Then, our political leaders in Arkansas convinced me that I should, he said. I'm sorry, what did you say? Wolf responded. The political leaders convinced you that you should be interested in these class actions? The judge pressed Hopkins to give names. Hopkins mentioned, quote, several legislators, people at the governor's staff, and the Department of Finance and Administration of Arkansas. Boy, hang on a second there. We've got to have as much revenue as we possibly can in this state, folks. I mean, that's obvious, is it not? But Wolf's focus, again, Wolf is the judge in this case, but Wolf's focus was on a retired state legislator named Steve Ferris. In particular, he wanted to know how much Hopkins had talked to Ferris about the law firms handling the pension fund's class actions. Ferris, Hopkins explains, was a member of the Arkansas General Assembly, which has indirect supervision of the pension fund because it adopts the laws that govern the organization. He said Ferris was co-chair of the Public Retirement Committee in the State House of Representatives. At the same time, Hopkins co-chaired the Public Retirement Committee in the State Senate. They grew up in the same county and went to the same college. Hopkins acknowledged he talked to Ferris and others about the case. Quote, you know, sometimes we'd get an interesting case, and I would tell them, here's this case, and Labaton represents us, Hopkins told the judge, noting that the fund works with other firms such as Bernstein, Litowitz, Berger, and Grossman, and Kaplan, Fox, and Kilsmer. But he denied that Ferris ever encouraged him to use Labaton. Quote, did he ever tell you that he had a role in introducing Labaton to Arkansas Teacher? Wolf asked. Quote, no, he never told me that. After the report came out, Ferris acknowledged to Hopkins that he had met a couple of Labaton attorneys and introduced them to Paul Doan, who was the pension fund's executive director at the time. Hopkins told the judge, quote, he introduced some attorneys that he knew and sort of rolled out of the room, end quote. In an interview, Ferris, now a board member of the Arkansas Public Employees Retirement System, acknowledged that he called Doan to introduce him to Labaton, but that was the extent of it. Quote, all I did was call Paul Doan and say, here are these people, he said. Every member of the retirement committee gets requests like that. Doan resigned in 2008 following the state audit that found he spent $34,515 on out-of-state travel expenses during the year he was executive director of the Arkansas Pension Fund. Doan could not be reached for comment. Of course, okay, so that is a summary of the National Law Journal and their reporting on this situation. So, again, there's already attention, and it's because it's this big class actions, lawsuit that's going on in, Massachusetts. Now, as far as the finder's fee, many of you might be wondering, $4.1 million going to this other guy, Chargot, apparently that's perfectly fine. At least that's what the lawyers have been arguing in the state of Massachusetts. That's okay. I honestly don't know what the rules are in other states. But here is the headline again, back to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. On July 15th, yesterday, Arkansas teacher retirement system chiefs roll in suit flagged. Special master report questions settlements, attorney's fees. And a lot of this is now happening. Okay, a lot of the news now is reaching Arkansas for one reason, and I want to be clear here. One of the reasons it's happening is because there are members of our Arkansas General Assembly who are asking questions. Let me say that again. There are members of our Arkansas General Assembly who are beginning to ask questions about this and what happened, and that is a very, very good thing. The first paragraph says some state lawmakers are raising questions and seeking more information about the Arkansas teacher retirement system and their participation in class action lawsuits. And they want to know, I mean, as everybody else does, about the $4.1 million finder's fee and everything else. One of the lawmakers who is asking questions is Mark Lowry, and he is is he the chairman? He's from Maumelle, and he is the co-chairman of the Joint Performance Review Committee. That's right. So under the header here, the subheader, innuendo and rumors, Representative Mark Lowry, according to Michael Wickline, said he's worried about the negative exposure that the teacher retirement system is being subjected to based on speculation about potential kickbacks and payoffs. Lowry, who is co-chairman of the Joint Performance Review Committee, said he wants more information to determine what has transpired. 5 weeks ago, Hopkins told his trustees that he wished Rosen's report was unsealed at the time because I think any innuendos put out will be shown to be incorrect. Well, so let's get to the bottom of this then. I mean, this needs to be swift. I'm tired of even the appearance of corruption here in the state of Arkansas. Who's tired of it? You know why? I mean, I want things to get cleaned up all around so we can actually talk about making Arkansas government better. Right now, we just want Arkansas government to be honest, and that seems to be, pretty hard thing to do at this point. Labaton said the referral payment, the $4.1 million, the referral payment discussed in the master's report was made to Mr. Chargot, a Texas-based lawyer who first introduced our firm to the Arkansas teacher retirement system in 2007. But George Hopkins was hired by the Arkansas teacher retirement system. Quote, no referral payments were made to anyone in Arkansas, the law firm said in a written statement. Chargot and Harrell, who are in the law firm together, could not be reached for comment by telephone last week. This is let's just be honest. This is not a very attractive story to report on because you have to get in the weeds. But I think the more complicated something is, the more opportunity there is for corruption. Right, Joe? Think about this. We've got to follow this story. It's complicated. A lot of it is hard to grasp because it's a lot of legalese and you have attorneys with attorneys, and that's going to make things complicated. But I'm telling you right now, the more complicated something is, the more your average person doesn't understand it, and the more opportunity there is for corruption, and the more opportunity there is for the Martha Schaffner Arkansas pie box mentality, which is actually that turned out to not be very complicated. Actually, it just turned out to be quite juvenile. Anyway, we're going to continue following this, but you tell me what you guys think. 870-275-9799. Any tips? You guys have any tips out there? Let me know what you think. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. We do have any more news out there. President Donald Trump this hour did meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And, of course, most in the mainstream media are trying to convince you right now that President Trump is, in fact, a Russian agent. This coming after a week where he, at the NATO summit, criticized Russia by exposing German hypocrisy, but he's somehow a Russian agent. This also coming on the heels of the FBI obviously trying to make this about politics because they announced those indictments the Friday before a Monday summit with Russia. Pretty sure that was planned to try to make this meeting with President Putin as difficult as possible. I just think it's clear they didn't, for some reason, the media, the deep state, they didn't want President Trump to meet with Vladimir Putin, and I would love to know why. It has nothing. The political. He's a Russian agent. That's all the narrative. The actual motivations, I think, are still concealed. I don't think we know what those are. But from a broad view, we're not idiots. Okay, I think you can see the wheels turning here, and there's something more going on here. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, I want to say hello to Rob. Rob is on Facebook. Rob says, "I'm just saying we're trying to run this down technically." Rob on Facebook writes that the audio on channel 26-7 out of Harrison and Mountain Home is delayed and has an echo. Morning, folks. Well, morning to you, Rob. We've tried to run that down, Rob. That doesn't appear to be us. It may be, but it doesn't appear to be because we're not hearing an echo other places. So, but we'll try to certainly figure out what's going on there, for sure. Okay, let's see here. What else do we have? On the at the top of the hour, okay, not only do we have these new allegations of Arkansas corruption in the teacher retirement system. Again, the Joint Performance Review Committee should be meeting, I think, tomorrow. And so we'll have more information, hopefully, on that for you later in the week. But again, allegations of potential kickbacks. And the judge in Massachusetts is certainly wanting to know more information if you read those transcripts that we went over just a second ago. But at the top of the next hour, we'll be talking about the state health providers. I mean, who are they going to be now? Who are the state health providers going to be now that the state of Arkansas has severed Medicaid contracts with preferred family health care? And preferred family health care, what do they say? They say, we just can no longer deliver the services without government contracts. We'll have that story for you coming up at 7:05. And then also don't forget that we will have Mr. Whitfield Hyman, who is a Libertarian candidate for District 8 out of the Fort Smith area. I want to have him on talk. I really just want to talk a little bit about, his libertarian philosophy. What does that mean to him and that sort of thing. And also there is a sweet slow-motion video of him firing a gun thanks to the folks at Free TV. And we're going to be interviewing again the proprietor of Free TV, Matt Giberson, on Tuesday as well. So excited about that. Let's get, what else do we have here? President Donald Trump tweeted this before his summit, before the summit meeting that took place this hour. President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were meeting this hour, I think about, 45 minutes ago. Our relationship with Russia has never been worse. This was before the summit. Has never been worse thanks to the many years of U.S. foolishness and stupidity, and now the rigged witch hunt. Talking about this Mueller investigation that I think is fast becoming. Now, you tell me. I mean, I know we probably have some liberal progressives out there. You tell me that the indictment from Rod Rosenstein... Rod Rosenstein. I know people want to call him Rod Rosenstein, but let's just call him Rod Rosenstein. The indictment from Rod Rosenstein was politically motivated. I mean, it's almost like this guy wants to get fired. And at this point, they want to fire Rod Rosenstein. The left wants Donald Trump to fire Rod Rosenstein so that they can whip the media up into a frenzy and get the protesters, get the George Soros-funded protesters out on the street and start making a difference. You know what I mean? That seems to be the case. Explain it to me any other way. The deep state doesn't want President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to meet. They didn't want this meeting to happen. And they looked very tense. I mean, they look in the photos and stuff. They look like they weren't having a very good time together. Of course, I don't know what's going to happen behind closed doors. Who knows? But they look pretty tense in front of the cameras just now. Happened over the last hour. You tell me, is there any other conclusion? I just don't see it. I've got a healthy skepticism of American government and the people who are in positions of power. It's a very American attitude to have. But when Rod Rosenstein comes out and announces those indictments on Friday, when there's a Russian meeting, not even a big deal, but there's a Helsinki meeting scheduled, you tell me that's not politically motivated? Come on, it's politically motivated. Had nothing to do with, we've got to get justice served. What do they say? Justice delayed is a miscarriage of justice. Has nothing to do with that. They keep putting off Michael Flynn's sentence. Remember Michael Flynn? Remember him? Why do they keep putting off his sentence? Why can't some of these other Russians who've been implicated actually see the evidence against them? The attorneys they've hired, they can't even see the evidence against them. Where is the evidence? Maybe there isn't any evidence. I think that's why you have the president calling it a witch hunt. Anyway, we've got one more hour of Conduit News coming your way next. Don't go anywhere, folks.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
tries to rename whatever their association is with the European Union, and it's basically exactly the way it was, but it's under a different name, then Donald Trump is saying, well, we would still be negotiating basically with the EU, and we don't want to do that. Like you said, I think a lot of Americans, Rick, are just now educating themselves as to the trade realities that we haven't really known about in the past. Like, I never knew it was hard to negotiate with the EU until you just said it.
Yeah, they're on their best day, they're tough to deal with. But and look, there's a whole lot of political correctness and issues that are viewed through that lens that really kind of color our relationship with the EU, and it's been a problem for quite a while. But President Trump went over there and with the NATO conference, and he just basically said, he put his cards on the table. Here's how it's got to be, and we're not going to, we can't be responsible. James Mattis said this, it's almost as if we love your children more than you do, because we're doing the lion's share to protect you from Russia. Meanwhile, you're doing business with Russia. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how does this make sense? And so Great Britain voted to leave the EU. Now, I'm an Anglophile. I lived in Great Britain as a kid. I love the British people. I was over there recently, and I can tell you that you've either got to do it or don't. This sort of half step that Theresa May is engaging in is sort of an effort to try and persuade people that, yes, she's responding to the vote of the British people, but at the same time retain that sort of what she views as that level of comfort with the European Union, but she's not really making a Brexit. She's making a more of a political accession, if nothing else. And quite frankly, I don't think the British people are going to stand for that. I mean, just from the tone that I've perceived while I was over there last month, I think that you've either got to go all in or all out. But this half-stepping is not palatable, and I think she's in trouble. She was a Remainer and now is responsible for implementing Brexit. She's trying to half-step it. And ultimately, you've got to get with the program or get out. And I think the British people are probably going to say it's time for you to go. But that said, back to the trade deal, Donald Trump's absolutely right. We want to have a trade deal with Great Britain, of all people. They're our greatest and longest ally. We certainly want to have a relationship with them. But we're not going to do it as an agent of the EU. I mean, that doesn't help us. And the EU is a separate deal, and we've tried that. We've been continue to try that. We continue to try to engage and trade with the EU, and they're extremely difficult to deal with. And so it would be much better for everybody involved if the UK just did their own thing, reestablished themselves as a sovereign, reclaimed their border security, reclaimed their cultural heritage, and were proud of it, and they want to be. And this is what I love about the British people, and that's really what I love about the American people. And I think that's what you're seeing. And it's not just, by the way, it's not just in Great Britain that this is taking place. The whole globalist notion, which, EU is sort of a microcosm of that, that's really not taking root. I was met with some Australians recently, and it's an awful lot like the United States, the dynamic there with really kind of proclaiming their own independence and sovereignty and being proud of their heritage as Australians, as we are as being Americans, and as Filipinos are of being Filipino. And I mean, why should these nations be deprived of their history, their heritage, and their culture? And the answer is they shouldn't be. It doesn't mean that we can't do business together. It doesn't mean that we can't have economic ties to these nations. It just means that we're different. And we have different history, we have different culture, and quite frankly, that's what I like about these other countries. That's why I like visiting other countries. If we just shake up the world into one homogenized, globalized system, what's the fun in that? Heck, I mean, why do I want to, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I enjoy going to Great Britain because it's Great Britain, right? I enjoy going and visiting other countries because they're different from ours. But I love America, and I still believe that we're the best country in the world, and there is such a thing as American exceptionalism that doesn't necessarily make us better, but certainly makes us markedly different from the rest of the world. And I think that's what the rest of the world really wants to see. And these folks in some of these foreign countries that I named, they are craving U.S. leadership that's been absent for about 10 years. And Donald Trump is really about bringing
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, Arkansas. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Paul. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We don't just want to talk about conservative ideas here. We actually want to see them implemented and work. It appears sometimes it's difficult to get the politicians to actually implement their campaign promises, but nevertheless, that's what our goal is, to measurably reduce the size and scope of government. The phone number 870-275-9799. You could also watch us live over at conduitnews.com or facebook.com/conduitnews, and you can sound off in the comment section. And I always appreciate everybody who's commenting and listening in the program. And your comments are really, really good, and I appreciate it. All right, so let's go with this first piece here, as we said earlier in the first hour, which if you missed the first hour, when you get to your desk, you can go back, at work, you can go back and listen to it at any point in the day, get the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud or the video archives. It's all for free. Headline: State health providers are stepping up to fill the void by scandal-stricken nonprofit group. But the problem is, the state of Arkansas was so dependent on preferred family health care to provide services that there's now a lot of people who are being told that their providers are no longer listed as, somebody that can continue their services. Meaning if you're a provider and you're working for preferred family health care, and now the state has severed government contracts and they're no longer doing these contracting with this company, then all of a sudden your provider, let's say your therapist or somebody that you're used to going to, is no longer covered. And people are getting this information, and it's making them very upset. They're wondering what's going on. Well, maybe, I know you may be losing service, but maybe more people will find out that there was a huge scam going on. But something tells me they're probably going to be more worried about their personal health, which is reasonable, than finding out about, what the next corruption headline is. Preferred family health care. We were so dependent on preferred family health care. They had 47 locations in Arkansas. Think about that. 47. There's 75 counties. Preferred family health care had 47 locations across the state. And they're of course based out of Springdale. And why did we cut off the contracts? Well, because preferred family health care systematically was taking federal Medicaid dollars and bribing our legislature and our General Assembly into getting more taxpayer dollars and to getting favorable legislation and favorable bills passed for them. And it got to the point where it had to happen. It took way too long, but it finally happened. You see, the federal government is investigating preferred family health care. And so far, the federal government that's investigating preferred family health care, the investigation has led to the conviction of four former state lawmakers. A state investigation assisted by the U.S. Justice Department also led to charges of fraud against a former state assistant Medicaid director. That's when everything went. That's when you had to end the contracts, because you have a former Medicaid director who knows the system that goes to work for the corrupt preferred family health care. It goes on, and one of the company's former lobbyists, who was also a director of its Arkansas operations, pleaded guilty last month to a multi-million-dollar bribery scheme in Arkansas. Now, that lobbyist is Rusty Cranford. Rusty Cranford, in his plea, claims that he paid Jeremy Hutchinson, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, $500,000 in bribes to pass favorable legislation. You want to know how arrogant these people thought they were? And look, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson still hasn't stepped down. He hasn't been charged. You want to know how arrogant these people are, though? I mean, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson passed a resolution on the Senate floor on behalf of preferred family health care that didn't even do anything. I just want you to understand that. They didn't even do anything. It was just a resolution thanking Tom and Bontia Goss and talking about how they are tireless advocates for blah, 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 healthcare, rainbows, unicorns. I mean, that's how they think they work. I mean, they think that this. They think that Arkansas government is just, basically a teenager's credit card, from what I can tell, and that the mechanisms and procedures. You know what? I'll pass a resolution that talks about how great you guys are. That actually happened. You can go look it up. Darrell Rhoda. Darrell Rhoda is the executive director of a company called Youth Bridge. Youth Bridge is another behavioral health nonprofit group based out of Fayetteville and also president of the Providers Association. Youth Bridge is trying to step in to fill the gap of services left by preferred family health care. Quote, the bottom line is that other providers could tell they were at a competitive disadvantage for years. Hang on. Now, this is interesting. Because, we really haven't heard about preferred family health care competitors that much. You haven't really heard about it. My question would be, if let's say you are at a competitive disadvantage with preferred family health care. Now, we know now that other behavioral health or other, government contractors in the healthcare, you're at a competitive disadvantage with preferred family health care. And let's say you just don't know why. Well, we know now why. We know why you're at a competitive disadvantage. How come preferred family health care keeps getting all those contracts? How come preferred family health care keeps going? Well, because they're paying legislators to pass bills, and they're paying legislators to procure for themselves business and lucrative government contracts to be basically have a corner on the market, to have, exclusivity when it comes to providing services. They have 47 locations in the state of Arkansas. Think about that. Do you understand the amount of money we're talking about here? So we now know why there was a competitive disadvantage. Now, the question I have, and look, I think it would be naive to assume that people in the same field don't talk, that there's not turnover or there's not competitive hiring away of this employee or that employee, or to where, kind of things, information is, let's just say, I don't think it's very compartmentalized in the field of the government. The line between, okay, where does preferred family health care end and our government begin? That line has clearly been blurred because it's first of all, it's health care, and that's happening right now with insurance companies, with hospitals. Where does the government end? Where does this, quote, private or this nonprofit? Again, there seems to be a ton of profit in nonprofits, if you know which one to work for. By the way, Joe, will you write this down? Seriously, I need you to write this down because I need to explore these nonprofits that don't pay any. That you wouldn't believe how many of these nonprofit healthcare entities have locations and buildings across the state, and I'm told they don't pay property tax. I want to research that because I'd like to start I'd like to start actually doing the math, and let's talk about how much further these subsidies and this, how much further it really goes. How deep does the rabbit hole actually go? That's a story for another time. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. Daryl wrote quote, "It's obvious what those disadvantages were now," meaning now we all know. We all know it was because you were bribing the General Assembly for state contracts. Preferred family health care was paid for a large range of services. Therapy, counseling for foster children, court-ordered drug and alcohol addiction treatment, professional consulting to the State Department of Human Services. Professional consulting, boy. Preferred family provided services to 3,118 clients in Benton and Washington counties in 2017. Boy, that's a lot. That's a whole lot. You go through here and you listen to the people that now don't have services because, it's a I guess let's call it a temporary interruption because the state was so dependent on preferred family health care and allowed this to go on for so long. Again, my question is this: how many people knew this was going on and didn't go to the FBI? How many people knew this was going on and didn't go to the Arkansas State Ethics Commission? I'm not some sort of career Marble Palace court member. I don't attend court at the Marble Palace. I do go down there occasionally to cover the news. I've been doing it long enough to realize that people talk. People talk. Because people count on, in many cases, the mainstream media or the media in general. People count on the information that's said in the crevices and the corners of the Marble Palace to never, ever, because people don't care about Arkansas government. People don't really care. They care more about what is on the national, what they're going to hear on the national 24-hour news cycle. But this is, in my opinion, this has gone on for so long. I know there are people that legitimately want to take care of this problem now. But I think you got to understand that there's a real urgency here. And if you have been in leadership and are now trying to save face, or at least maybe you're not trying to save face, but I think you at least need to be prepared and you need to be ready to have that kind of skepticism presented to you, that the people who are in positions of power at the legislature, the people who have been in the General Assembly in leadership positions while all of this was going on, I think it's reasonable for the people to say, where were you then? I know you're here now when we have allegations of corruption, we have convictions, we have guilty pleas, we have more indictments to come, so we're told, but who knows? I know you're here now. Where were you then? Where were you then? It's perfectly reasonable to ask. And it's perfectly reasonable to be skeptical and suspicious of where we go from here with whether it's ethics rules, whether it's new laws, whether it's fake outrage, whether it's real outrage. Can we all legitimately ask, are we just putting lipstick on a pig? And I think, some of the politicians' egos, you guys need to just put those aside and realize what has happened, what has taken place. And if your philosophy is, well, this is just the price of government, I might agree with you to an extent in terms of this is what humans do when they're given too much power in government, which is why you need to shrink it. You need to decrease with checks and balances the amount of authority and the amount of leeway that people have once they get in government. And that takes bold reform. The Republican Party, I really wish the R next to your name. I wish it stood for reform, actual reform. Again, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. That's what I hope for. We've got to go to break. We're going to be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Who's next to zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Last week, the big news we were waiting on last week was the announcement of Donald Trump's Supreme Court pick. Of course, now, a week later, Donald Trump is a Russian agent, and this is also a week after, by the way, he criticized Russia by exposing German hypocrisy on a natural gas deal at the NATO summit. Remember that? But he's a Russian agent. I got to tell you, during the top of the hour, I was watching the news, and it's obvious why the Justice Department or the deep state or whatever announced those indictments. To me, it's very obvious. And you know what? You know why it's obvious? It's so that they could go over. I was watching the CBS coverage during the break. They were showing the summit, Trump and Putin, that they've already met. They've already been in front of the cameras. They've already, shook hands. And while they're shaking hands, do you know what the mainstream media is reporting? They're reading the script narrative of Rod Rosenstein's indictments. while Trump and Russia are shaking hands. Now, if you don't think that is some sort of control, manipulation, attempt to control the way you're interpreting these events, then if you know what, if you're blind, some people just aren't you can't see if you're blind, right? Some people aren't willing to accept the truth of what's going on. But it's patently obvious to me what attempts are being made here to control and manipulate the American public by claiming that they're being objective, and it's very sad. But on that subject of Kavanaugh and the Supreme Court pick, let's get a Family Council update, shall we? Over at familycouncil.org, their video, whenever you're ready, Joe. No, it's okay. Familycouncil.org, they put out this update.
This is news from Family Council. Judge Brett Kavanaugh is President Trump's pick to be the next justice at the U.S. Supreme Court. Judge Kavanaugh was appointed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia by President George W. Bush in 2003. He was confirmed by the U.S. Senate in 2006 and has served as a federal judge for the past 12 years. Regarding his judicial philosophy, the Gospel Coalition wrote Judge Kavanaugh is considered a proponent of originalism, a manner of interpreting the Constitution that begins with the text and attempts to give that text the meaning it had when it was adopted, and textualism, a method of statutory interpretation that relies on the plain text of a statute to determine its meaning. While in private practice in the 1990s, he served as chair of the Federalist Society's Religious Liberties Practice Group and wrote 2 pro bono Supreme Court amicus briefs in support of the cause of religious liberty. Family Council, promoting, protecting, and strengthening traditional family values in Arkansas. Visit us online at familycouncil.org.
All right, again, familycouncil.org there. Man, I love those videos. Don't you guys love them? Hey, and you know what? They come right to your inbox. I'm just saying. And, you know, this isn't any sort, I mean, this is no sort of paid ad or anything. I'm just telling you that, like, Family Council is legitimate. I mean, they really are on top of things. And you can subscribe to their email list. Go to familycouncil.org. If you want. So I would highly recommend it. I think it's good. We told you last hour. We told you last hour that on Thursday we're going to be interviewing Judge Jeanine Pirro. Excited about that. She has a new book out, which is released. I guess it'll be available tomorrow, and it's a pretty exciting book. I'm excited to read it, to look into it. You can pre-order it now, but you're not going to actually be able to get it at bookstores until tomorrow. Judge Jeanine Pirro, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. So definitely want to look forward and plan your Thursday morning around 7:30, 7:33 is when the interview will start. To get to listen to her. Very excited about that. In the first hour of the program, if you missed it, we talked about the teacher retirement and the problem with teacher retirement. They've been in this class action lawsuit. They were given a $300 million settlement, or they won a $300 million verdict, rather. But there's this little question of how the attorneys gave a referral fee of $4.1 million to this other person. The judge is asking, did that $4.1 million go to anybody in Arkansas as kind of a kickback? There are allegations of kickbacks. So the General Assembly is convening, or the Arkansas General Assembly Committee on Joint Performance Review is convening this week to try to dive into exactly what happened, what did not happen with the Arkansas teacher retirement system, and this class action lawsuit where they were the lead plaintiff. This judge in Massachusetts asking some questions, getting some answers that lead to more questions than answers, I'll tell you that much. We covered that story for you at 6:30 last hour, so the second half of the program, go to conduitnews.com. You can get it there. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Libertarian Whitfield Hyman. Back in a moment.
Back U.S. leadership. And so that's what's taking place around the world.
Yeah, it certainly is. I concur with your sentiments there. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. Last question. So I know, the House has nothing really to do with the confirmation process of Supreme Court nominees, but what are your thoughts on Brett Kavanaugh? What's the feeling up there among your colleagues?
Well, the book on him is, he's an originalist, much like Clarence Thomas, and I think that what you could expect from him is, I don't care about, conservative as much as I care about constitutionalists, and so I think that's what you have in a pick like Kavanaugh. I read an interesting analysis earlier today or this morning, and what the liberals up here are mostly afraid of is not Kavanaugh, but they're actually afraid of the Constitution. And so they talk about the Constitution, but what they really want to do is put people in place to help them alter the Constitution. And so there's a difference between, an originalist interpretation of the Constitution versus judicial activism. And so when they're denied their opportunity to engage in judicial activism, that scares them. And so what they're afraid of more than Neil Gorsuch or Brett Kavanaugh or Alito or Clarence Thomas, what they fear more is the fact that they are denied the opportunity to engage in really a perversion of the Constitution. So what they fear really is the Constitution itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they know that if you have somebody that just actually adheres to the binding of the Constitution, meaning let's subscribe to the enumerated powers, the government can do this, what's specifically enumerated, and it can't do what's not specifically enumerated. And that, you're exactly right, Congressman Crawford. That's a great analysis. That does seem to be what they are worried about. Well, I listen, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always great to have you on, and I look forward to doing it again here in a couple of weeks.
Let me throw this out real quick to farmers that are listening. I tell you, it's not lost on me or anybody else the fact that U.S. farmers, Arkansas farmers in particular, are stepping up to do their part to reclaim American sovereignty in the global marketplace. So while we endure some short-term discomfort, the long-term payoff is going to be much more beneficial. So I just want to commend Arkansas farmers for their willingness to really take it for the team here, broadly speaking. And they know what I'm talking about, and you know what I'm talking about. It's uncomfortable right now, but in the long term, we're going to be much better off. And for those farmers that understand that, I appreciate that, and we're working hard to address this. But in the meantime, I appreciate what they're doing. I appreciate their willingness to
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I'm Whit Hyman, and I approve this message.
All right, so that is a video from Free TV, okay? And this is that was shot by Matt Giberson. He's going to be on the program 24 hours from now to talk about that. But the person featured in that video, that preview for episode 1, is a guy by the name of Whit Hyman. And Whit joins us back on the program once again. Whit, thanks so much for being with us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Whit, tell us first of all, tell us a little bit about how you were involved in this interview with Free TV, and how did it go?
Well, Matt contacted me and he wanted to do a series for people who are running for office that he supports here in Arkansas, and it's his idea to start off every episode with going down to the range and shooting some various weapons, and for me, mine was down at Thor in Van Buren, and we got to shoot a lot of fully automatic weapons, which I'd never done before.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they were fully automatic weapons. That is fantastic. Was it a lot of fun?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was expensive to go burn through ammo like that, but it was fun.
That's fantastic. I look forward to seeing episode 1, and I understand he's having some great success. Now, is it mostly a libertarian-minded project where they're trying to interview libertarian candidates?
Yeah, I think every candidate that Matt's planning on interviewing is libertarian. I don't know if he'll change his mind, to expand how many candidates he'll interview if there's a race where there's not a libertarian running. But yeah, it's libertarian candidates.
Okay.
Now.
Well, I'm excited to talk to him about that. So let's talk a little bit about your candidacy as a libertarian, Whit, for Senate District 8 out of the Fort Smith area. Obviously, you've got a lot of space between now and November, but what made you want to get into the race?
Well, actually, we've got a special election coming up in a month.
Now, tell me about that. Is that to fill the remainder of the term?
Yeah, that'll only be for a few months. But yeah, it's I'm going against Frank Gladwell in a month, and then what's odd about that is Frank did not beat Matt Pitch for the general election, so it's going to be Matt Pitch and I going against each other in November.
It's so confusing because, like you said, there were multiple, because you've got elections to finish out the term of Jake Files, and then you've got which Matt Pitch wouldn't be allowed to do because he was a sitting state representative, and it's very strange how they arranged all of this. And it's making it really confusing. Okay, so we have a special election coming up in a month's time, and then we have the general election after that will decide. It'll be between, I guess, Matt Pitch and you, correct?
Right, and one of the problems. This is kind of confusing for everybody because it took forever for Jake Files to step down, and it took forever for the governor to call that special election. I think the governor's pick in this race is Matt Pitch. Obviously, it was Matt Pitch over Frank Gladwell, and I think there's some political reasons there as to why it took Jake Files so long to step down, and it took the governor so long to call a special election.
No, I think you're right. I think it would have really hurt Matt Pitch's chances of making this leap to the higher chamber if there had been a special election called, let's say this time last year, which is things would just look a lot different. And we talked about that. I think I even predicted that there was a lot of stalling going on. There was a policy put forward that you didn't have to resign until you'd been basically indicted, or I might as well have said, until you're in jail, you can still serve in the Senate. I mean, it's just very, very, very strange stuff. So what do you make about all the corruption that's in the headlines every single day, Whit?
Well, I think that the corruption that's in the headlines is exactly what you get when you have a program set up for politicians in Little Rock to divvy out millions of dollars to specific businesses. I think during one of our debates, Matt Pitch said, "Well, we don't know how to stop some of this corruption. There's nothing we could have done, in writing our laws to stop it." And that's simply not true. If you didn't have a system set up to where each senator or representative got to divvy out millions of dollars to special interests in their district, then we wouldn't have this. If you didn't have a system where businesses were allowed to lobby for special tax breaks and subsidies in Little Rock, then we wouldn't have this. The businesses wouldn't want to spend millions of dollars lining the back pockets of politicians if there wasn't going to be anything they could get out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's for both Democrats and Republicans. They consistently want to have these special interests get paid. What was the subsidies to steel mill over there in Central Arkansas or wherever it is. I mean, that's just one example of many. pull up the code, you got special taxes and all sorts of things for all sorts of different businesses. And if everybody was treated equally, we wouldn't have this kind of problems.
Yeah, I think it certainly would be, more equitable. I mean, at the same time, we have a system where, okay, you have businesses. These businesses can, try to lobby and get something from the government or whatever. And I think to some degree you're always going to have that. And in many ways, it's their right to do it. But you have to have a government, in my opinion, that is, if the government itself, if the structure of the government is less powerful than it is now, then those, then maybe it's not worth the time. Maybe it's not worth the investment because, like you said, they're getting something back for their investment. I mean, they're paying the lobbyists, they're paying the lobbying firms. The lobbying firms are then paying their employees to have, giving them their clients, and they're paying them massive sums of money because, they want the government to pick them to be the ones that get the money. And then once the company, whatever it is, the, quote, private company, the business, they get their money or they get their sweet deal, then they are expected to tie the portion of that money back into political action committees. And those political action committees then maintain and protect the status quo from any, let's say, limited government types. Do you consider yourself a limited government person, Whit?
Yeah. I'm probably the most limited government candidate I've ever met that's running for Senate right now. And then Arkansas has a lot of different problems right now. In 2012, we only had there was 102 low-income occupations that the Institute for Justice monitors for occupational licensing. Okay, in 2012, Arkansas only licensed 52 of those. Now we're up to 72 just 6 years later. We're ranked 6th for the most, onerously licensed and ranked 3rd for the most broadly licensed. So, I was just looking them up today. If you want to install fire alarms in Arkansas, you have to work for somebody else for 5 years. If you want to be a painting contractor, you have to spend years of your life working for somebody else before you can go do it. And what this does is this transfers wealth from low-income and middle-income people to people who are in the upper echelons of society, people who can just sit back and force people to work for them for years for low wages. And not only that, it makes all these things more expensive. So, this is not good for the economy, the way we do things here in Arkansas. And it's just the whole system needs to be totally rewritten and made a lot simpler. If you want to have somebody who's licensed and you want to hire just a licensed professional, that's great. Don't force those preferences onto somebody else, because it's bad for the economy. There's a lot of projects out there that simply will not get done because of the costs. So that's where we are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At one point somebody told me that Arkansas has more licensing boards than the state of New York. I mean, that's crazy when you think about it. And these are obstacles of you're essentially cutting the rungs off of the ladder where people who are born into bad socioeconomic circumstances, or let's just say maybe worse off than others, you're now making it harder for them to learn a skill and be able to compete. And it's all in some ways it's about public safety, Whit. But we know, you and me both know, that most of the time now these licensing boards, it's gone beyond public safety. It's gone beyond any of that or consumer protection. And it's essentially becoming a way to protect the people who have already achieved, to protect their margins, to protect them from having to compete. And that actually hurts with innovation. That hurts this concept of thinking outside the box that can actually improve things, going down. It can actually advance technology or advance service or whatever. Can you tell me, we're talking with Whit Hyman. He's a Libertarian candidate for Senate District 8. Can you tell me libertarianism in Arkansas. What is that to you, Whit?
Well, I think I see a lot of them are very similar to Republicans, except for more personal freedom and for more economic freedom. And I know libertarianism can be scary because, this isn't just one of the normal two choices we have. This isn't Republican or Democrat. I don't know what a libertarian is. But a lot of them are very similar to Republicans. They just want to take it a step further, and they want to, be more fair to the average person than a lot of the Republican candidates. For example, when I was running, I went to one debate, and the candidates were asked if they wanted to legalize firearm suppressors. And 2 out of the 3 candidates that were running on the Republican ticket wouldn't even answer the question. One of those was Matt Pitch. Wouldn't even answer the question. Frank Gladwell answered the question, and he said, he didn't see a need to legalize firearm suppressors in Arkansas. I disagree with that answer, but at least he answered it. A lot of Republican candidates, they simply, compared to libertarianism, they won't answer the questions. And I think when a lot of people who are Republican or Democrat listen to libertarians, they have a lot of knee-jerk reactions. You know what? I don't like that position. But at least the libertarian candidate is telling you where they stand. Ask that question to the Republican or Democrat candidate. They simply won't answer it because they're afraid of offending somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So, but libertarianism, just less taxes, less regulations. We would probably, by and large, be for the legalization of marijuana just because we don't want to spend money fighting it. It's just not our place to charge everyone in the state to stop.
So
small
how did
percentage of the population.
What are your thoughts? I mean, you're also an attorney, so what are your thoughts on this whole process? We had the constitutional amendment, we have medical marijuana now, but what really seems what we have is a regulatory nightmare.
Yeah, and they're just trying to make it as difficult as possible, so it'll fail, and so then they'll be able to say, look, medical marijuana failed. We shouldn't even have it. That's my personal opinion. That was another thing that they asked my opponents about during the debates, and Matt Pitch got up there and wrung his hands and was like, well, I don't agree with it, but they passed it, and I heard there's some corruption going on with the committee, but there's nothing we could have done about that. There's no way we could have written the rules any differently. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, this whole process, the more complicated you make it, and the more obtuse you make these little committees, and the more restricted that you make how many licenses that you can give out, which they didn't, as you may know, the legislature decided not to give out the full amount of licenses that they could have under the constitutional amendment.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it to where corruption is just inherent to the system. It's, I don't know. The fact that he can't see that just blows my mind. Another big difference between Republicans and libertarians is these subsidies, these big corporations. You talk to your average Republican candidate, they'll talk about economic growth, economic progress, and how they want to, attract businesses from other places to Arkansas. And you ask them how they do that, and they want to do that by giving money to big corporations to come here. But the problem is, as soon as Alabama offers them one more dollar, or as soon as Texas offers them one more dollar, they shut down their whole plant, and they move across the state lines, and we've spent, billions of dollars or millions of dollars attracting this business that's now gone, and we never get our investment back.
You find it odd. The corporate welfare, which is what you're talking about, that used to be something that I would hear the Democrats, haw and cry over all the time, but it was only the corporate welfare when it had to do with oil companies or something that they really disagree with. But the liberals and the Democrats and the people on the left, when it comes to economic development, so-called economic development here in Arkansas, you don't hear them cry that the government is picking winners and losers or the government is involved in corporate welfare and that sort of thing. It seems like their eat the rich mentality is only something that applies to national companies, but not when it comes to people locating here in the state for taxpayer money. Isn't that weird to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I used to think that I have no idea. Both parties love to give our money to companies.
Yes.
And claim it's economic development. They go and spend millions of dollars on these downtowns in these cities, or on these factories that they want to bring in, and they make. I mean, it doesn't end up helping anyone. I think there's that that group out of UCA, where their economics department has evaluated all of these different subsidies to all these different companies in Arkansas, and it does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no proof that it helps anyone, except for it makes some people a lot richer.
Yep.
And it makes our taxes go up to pay for these stupid programs. But yeah, I have no idea why there's been this shift, but something tells me it's because that a lot of the companies are paying our politicians and supporting our politicians to come to these conclusions.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on the program. It's always good to talk about this stuff. We were talking with Whit Hyman. He's a libertarian. He's a candidate for Senate District 8. Whit, I'd love to do it again sometime soon, but I want to make sure if people want to find out more about who you are, where can they go for that?
That's a good question. I guess they can go to one of my Facebook page, Whitfield Hyman, attorney at law. I'll start posting more of my political views there.
Perfect.
So that they can learn.
All right. Well, it's always great to have you on, and I look forward to that first interview with you and Mr. Giberson there with Free TV. We're going to be interviewing him tomorrow about this whole project because I think it's fascinating. Number one, I just really appreciate the production value that I've seen so far in some of these videos, and it's definitely he's a real talent. So, Whit, I appreciate it, sir. You have a great week.
All right, you too.
All righty. Whitfield Hyman, everybody, Libertarian candidate for Senate District 8, that is out of the Fort Smith area. And we want to give a shout-out to those listening out of Fort Smith on the Marshall. That's 97, that is, hang on one second. Yeah, that's 1230 AM and 96.7 FM, KFPW, the Marshall. We appreciate you guys listening, and we will be back in just a moment.
What does the name Triple R have to do with bail bonds? Well, the Triple R stands for reliable, respectful, and relentless. When in need of bail bonds, you only need one number. Call 866-593-7457. Even if Triple R can't help, they'll take the time to provide you with the numbers of other bond companies in your area that can be of service. That's why they're the hub of Arkansas bail bonds. Triple R Bail Bonds has an app, they're paperless, and always reliable, respectful, and relentless.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so President Donald Trump has met with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the liberal media wants you to think that Donald Trump was essentially reporting into his boss. Some of these tweets are crazy. I'm reading. I mean, my mistake is that I'm over at the Guardian's website right now. President Trump saying that I think the world wants us to get along. Goes on to talk about how we have 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. And then he went on to say, I think that's a bad thing, and I think you would agree. He also said, wait for it, as he reached to shake Vladimir Putin's hand, President Donald Trump said, quote, it's great to be with you, end quote. Oh, the horror. Oh, the agony. I'm dying on the inside. This is going to be, I've got to approach it with a little bit of humor because for anybody, I'm telling you, for anybody in our shoes, limited government, I mean, if you don't watch the press and the coverage this week with that attitude, I mean, you're just going to be, I mean, you might have to be committed. I might have to be committed. I'm just telling you right now, the Rod Rosenstein indictments on Friday, they tried to stop this meeting from taking place. And now, what is CBS doing? Again, I watched this report with CBS as President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin, they come into the same room at the summit in Helsinki, Finland, and they're snapping photos, and you can hear they're not talking about what they may discuss. Instead, the CBS News reporters are reading the script and the narrative from the Rod Rosenstein indictments about the 12 Russians being indicted as Donald Trump is standing on stage with Vladimir Putin. Now, if you don't think that is scripted from the media standpoint, that they have not planned this, that they are trying any success that Donald Trump has, any success, whether it's at NATO, which he had success, right? Whether it's in Britain, which he had success, any success that President Donald Trump has is a net negative for the mainstream media and the what is apparent deep state in this country today, where we have some sort of dispute where, I'm telling you, the dispute that we are seeing in the deep state is revealing one thing, and this is a truth. Our government appears to no longer be a monolithic government. And I know it always has been segmented in Republicans and Democrats and things like that. No, I'm talking about within the executive branch of government. Within the executive branch of government, it apparently is no longer monolithic, and that is on display for all of the country to see if you are willing to entertain the idea and look at the evidence. The evidence is overwhelming. We've got to go. This broadcast is available over at conduitnews.com. We will see you back here tomorrow morning. Arkansas, be safe.